everyone who enters our doors to feel. An integral part of our mission is to embrace one another across and among the age spectrum of congregants. Take the opportunity to learn from each other and grow as a supportive community. We recognize that with aging, we experience shifting roles, physical changes, and loss. What the Wise Aging program focuses on is the grit, grace, and wisdom that can be found in aging. In our youth-oriented culture, our inevitable aging is usually surrounded by fear and denial. Through discussion, active listening, small group sharing, journaling, and reflection, we develop a deeper sense of well-being and connection as we embrace living well all the way through our lives. In Psalm 90, we ask God, teach us to use all of our days that we may attain a heart of wisdom. As folks over 50, we have learned to approach challenges and make choices that reflect living with spirit, resilience, and joy, and to live the legacy that we want to leave, which is to seek out our best selves and live in the present. This is very much seeing aging through a Jewish lens, as we are reminded always to choose life. I also want to point out that in the process of participating in these sessions, those of us who began the Wise Aging program as strangers or acquaintances have developed strong bonds of friendship. This is partly due to the nature of our conversations and to the kindness, sensitivity, and amazing leadership of our two facilitators, Barbara Hausman and Mark with a C, Blessoff, who are members at Oak Park Temple and who were trained by the Institute of Jewish Spirituality several years ago. And they've been running sessions at Oak Park and at Eitz Chaim for quite a number of years. It's actually not necessary to be Jewish, however, to participate in Wise Aging, and I definitely want to make that point. Family members and friends are certainly welcome. I'm not sure when we will start a new Wise Aging program at Eitz Chaim, hopefully soon, but Barbara and Mark are in the process of revamping the initial program, which was 2 hours in person for 7 weeks with a break in the middle, to a 90-minute Zoom format. And obviously, some accommodations need to be made. And I do also want to mention that the class is based on a book by Rabbi Rachel Cowan and Dr. Linda Thau called Wise Aging, Living with Joy, Resilience, and Spirit. It's the kind of book that you don't read from cover to cover. It's really best to participate with other people because there are quite a number of exercises and discussion topics. Okay, let's talk about aging, ageism rather, and attitudes. Ageism is defined as stereotyping and or discrimination against individuals or groups on the basis of their age. This may be casual or systemic. The term was coined in 1969 by a man named Robert Butler to describe discrimination against seniors, and he patterned this on sexism and racism. He defined ageism as a combination of 3 connected elements, including prejudicial attitudes towards older people, towards old age and the aging process, discriminatory practices against older people, and institutional practices and policies which perpetuate stereotypes. Right now, I'd like to do a little activity with you. If Marla will please show a few greeting cards for me. And the first one, card 1A, you'll see the front of the card. Admitting your real age, what honesty, what courage, what integrity. And 1B. What a memory. Happy birthday. Card number 2A.
Always a bit of a lag bar because I have to bring it up on my screen. So just
That's okay.
FYI.
It's okay. Better you than me. So glad you're here.
Oh, sure. Just realize that it's
we all have our strengths, and this one isn't mine. When you're old, your butt cheeks droop, your knees get stiff, it's tough to poop. You eat at 4 to save a buck. To be good thing you're young, because that would suck. Happy birthday. And 3A, there were only 3. Don't sweat turning 50. Three beat.
Oh boy.
Nobody likes a sweaty senior citizen. Thanks, Marla. Okay, so I know there were a few little chuckles, but what does this say about people over 50? And, what are your thoughts about these? Do you like receiving cards like these? Feel free to jump in. What do they say about aging?
I don't keep them.
You don't keep those.
No.
It's just funny. A very unoriginal way to try to make a joke about something that people are afraid of.
Okay.
And it just follows a stereotype that's been around for years.
Mm-hmm.
It's also a way to laugh at things that everybody has in common.
True. We're all going to age, hopefully.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, I mean, it basically suggests that you get to a certain age, you can't do things that you used to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Or you do them differently.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that we know maybe, but the fact that you can't do them is the harsh part.
Mm.
Fear of death, disability, and dependence are major causes of ageism. Avoiding, segregating, and rejecting older people are actually coping mechanisms that allow people to avoid thinking about their own mortality. And ageism, as you may know, is more of a Western phenomenon. People in Eastern cultures revere older people, and older people don't do some of the things that we do, like notice my hair color. Well, no amount of wise aging sessions is probably going to change that about me, but yeah, fear of mortality, that is a big one, and fear of being dependent. And somebody mentioned not being able to do the fear of not being able to do the things that we were able to do. Okay, so have any of you experienced that, where you are not able to do some things that you used to do? And what might they be? And
climbing up on ladders to chain light bulbs. I don't like to do that anymore. I have fear of falling off the ladder.
Okay, so what do you do about having your light bulbs changed?
I wait for my son to come.
There you go. Okay. All right. Okay.
Sharon, I think that's interesting. You talk about fear. I find that I have a lot more fear than I used to. Maybe because I have certain experiences of falling, whereas when I was younger, I never feared falling, but I've had a couple falls. It's like, whoa, how did that happen? So I think when we talk about what's changed is just a certain amount of fear that's brought about from experiences we've had since we've been alive. Like we didn't have those experiences as a younger person, like knowing loved ones who have died or something. So I think it does manifest itself as fear.
Yeah, I wanted to say something. I don't have a fear of falling, but I have a fear of injury because it takes me much longer to recover. And I'd rather be fearful and not do stuff because if I break my arm, it's going to take me forever to recover. So.
Okay, but so maybe you're living more in the present, being more conscious of what you're doing.
Yeah, I guess.
And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I have a fear of falls too. I'm in physical therapy because I've fallen a lot lately. And I have a ladder, but I don't use it either. And I have a couple pairs of glasses. You know, a lot of people think of when you wear bifocals, that's an old age thing. And I don't like that because I've been wearing bifocals since I was 21.
Okay, so, all right. I would like to ask you, what are some examples of ageism that you see in healthcare, for example, or employment, Hollywood, advertising?
I mean, I retired large part because people just kept asking me, so, geez, you've been here an awful long time. When are you going to leave? People wanted my job, some of the young kids. And, after a while, you just began to take the hint.
Okay. Anybody else in the employment area? So instead of looking at you as a wise, sage person that could offer perspective and advice, they were waiting for you to leave.
Until I was actually leaving, and then they suddenly said, "Gee, who's going to do these things?"
Yeah. There's actually a new word, saging, as opposed to aging, because that is actually something that we have to offer. We have a wisdom from our experiences, and as we break down the concepts of ageism for ourselves as well as for other people that we know, we are able to show that the stereotypes are just that, stereotypes.
Yeah, but you used a very important word there, Barb. It's experience. There's all those life experiences that those of us that were in positions for a long time, it wasn't that we became too expensive for the company. Okay. It was that the experiences we had and that we could provide to the younger people in companies, they weren't being respected or accepted.
Mm-hmm. Yes. When I retired from teaching, someone that I taught with, who was still there on a part-time basis, he was kind of semi-retiring, And he told me this experience that he had. Over the years, he had developed, I worked in a deaf and hard of hearing program, and it's necessary often for teachers of the deaf to develop their own curriculum. And he developed an amazing math program for working with deaf students for whom math was particularly challenging. And there was a young teacher who came into the program, and she actually was taking over some of the math. He was teaching some other things. And he offered her to sit down with her and talk about this curriculum that he had spent quite a lot of time developing. He had taught in the program for nearly 30 years. And she looked at him and she said, "That's okay, I can figure it out myself." So that speaks exactly to what you were saying, Harvey.
Yeah, so much for experience.
Yeah, I was going to say too, it's a lot of the 20 and 30 somethings that I have worked with. Some of them are afraid to move forward on their own because in my profession, I'm a veterinarian. Some of them are afraid to go forward because they haven't had the schooling like we did back in the day. But the other thing is some of them are stubborn enough that they want, and I'm sure it happens all over, that they want to reinvent the wheel rather than taking wisdom or experience from those of us that have gone through it.
Yes, exactly. Any others of you who have experienced ageism yourself, as some people have shared? Have you gone to doctor's appointments where you come in with something that you truly believe is an issue and you're told, well, you know, you're getting older, so you can expect these kinds of things to happen?
I have kind of an amusing one also. This just happened to me a couple weeks ago. I was at the grocery store. I was in my workout clothes. I had just come from the gym from working out, went to the grocery store and had them bag one bag full of groceries. It wasn't a plastic bag. It was my own bag full of groceries. And the man looked at me and he looked at the bag and he said, "Do you need somebody to help bring this out to the car for you, ma'am?" I said, "No, I'm finishing up my workout. Thanks a lot."
Great. Yes, I've had that experience as well. I have. What about our differences, attitudes toward attractiveness and differences between men and women in terms of attractiveness? What kinds of comments have you heard or observed?
You've all gotten better looking.
Excuse me?
You've all gotten better looking.
We've all gotten better looking. Thank you. So have you,
Harvey.
How about hair color on men and women? What do people tend to say about men when they go gray?
They look distinguished.
Yes, they look distinguished. And women?
They look old and haggard.
They look old and haggard. Well, not all. Some look quite.
I beg to differ.
Right. I think a lot of it has to do maybe on how a woman carries herself and her gray hair. I mean, you know, I look at Elise, I look at Sharon, and you know, I don't see haggard old women. So there you go. And Mary and others of you.
Do you think that's changing a little? Because when I see ads now for makeup, I'm seeing some older women wearing makeup and they're beautiful. And I see young people saying they're beautiful too.
Yeah.
I think it's changing a little bit.
I agree with you. I've noticed ads and more older people, being featured, and in some of the film industry as well.
I don't know if anybody else feels this way or not, but we've noticed just from talking to or getting together or Zooming with people since COVID, nobody can get haircuts or hair colors or whatever. I've never colored my hair, so I can't tell you what that's like. but people who have not been able to do it, they're like looking amazing. I saw my brother-in-law the other day who hasn't gotten a haircut since like March, and he looks great.
See, there you go.
What's the name of that TV show with Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin?
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, I
Frankie
know.
and somebody.
Frankie and Johnny.
yeah, so there was an episode where Jane Fonda was with her younger, I don't know if they're married in the show or not, or whatever, but anyway, she said, you know, you don't know who I really am. And she comes downstairs and she doesn't have any makeup on. And I don't know if anybody saw that episode. And I thought that it was very brave of Jane. Number one, I don't know how many plastic surgeries she's had, but the way she looked on camera without makeup was quite startling. But I think the message to what you're speaking, Barb, was there. It's like, you think I look like this, but I don't. This is me. And can you accept me? And I don't know if anybody else saw that episode. It was very interesting.
That's it. That's it in a nutshell, is this idea that of not accepting ourselves. If we don't embrace the age that we are, it's akin to not accepting ourselves. I want to share with you a poem. Marla, you've got that poem, Worst Day Ever? Okay. We can raise it. Is it raised up enough so that people can, yeah. Okay, it's the first line. Today was the absolute worst day ever. Okay, take a minute to read that.
Wow.
Is everybody finished? Okay, now read it from the bottom up.
Wow.
That's good.
Okay, so what does that tell you about life?
Upside down. No, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
It's all in your perspective,
Yeah.
which direction you're facing.
There you go.
Exactly. It definitely speaks to our attitude and how it informs what we do. A little background on this poem. It was written by a 16-year-old Orthodox student. Students were asked by their teacher to describe their worst day ever. And she did not believe there was any such thing as a worst day. So she, as Marge said, she turned it upside down. She turned it on its head, and she wrote this poem. She's, as I said, she's Orthodox. She's affiliated with the Lubavitch branch of Hasidic Judaism. And she says that her poem reflects the Jewish idea that it's possible to control how we see the world, whether negatively or positively. I don't think there is such a thing as the worst day ever. She said, I wanted to show how your day is really based on how you look at things. And, you know, that's true of our age. And of our aging and the aging process. I wanted to, just before we close, read you this message by a man named Dr. Bill Thomas, who's both a physician specializing in geriatrics and also a theater performer. And he says, old and young are two distinct times of life, neither one better or worse than the other. He talks about the different ways brains process information and foster creativity at different times of life. The young tending to be more literal and mathematical, and the old older are better at improvisation and making associations. He tells a fable about a woman passing into old age who serenely gives up the physical attributes of youth in exchange for wisdom and a revered place in her community. Quote, "The crone finds new beauty in age," Thomas proclaims. "It's a loveliness the maiden cannot know. Honor this beauty and it will honor you." So, one thing we do at the end of our sessions is we always end with the Shehechianu, because it is a statement really of gratitude that we've arrived at this place and at this time. So I would like us to say that, but I will stay on for anyone who has any more questions after that. So, Baruch Atah Adonai, feel free to join me. Eloheinu melech haolam, she'echianu v'higanu lazman hasa. Thank you very much for joining me today. And I'm happy to answer any questions about the class that you might have. It's not really a class, it's a series of sessions.
Started as a class, right?
Started as a class, but it technically never really was a class. But really what we do is Mark and Barbara will give us some readings. And as I said, it is based on a book. And so we will read ahead and then they will choose some discussion topics. And we will talk, and sometimes there are other kinds of activities. Sometimes, well, when we've been in person, there's been there's been some meditation and other types of activities, a little journaling, mostly discussion.
Barb, I was under the impression that it was all women. And here this morning, it's really great to see men.
No, it isn't. Actually, in our Wise Aging class, the one that I'm in, we have two men, Mark being one and Ashley being another. And actually, we had another group of Wise Aging last summer. And that group, there were 10 in that group, 10 or 11, and there were it was actually one more man than woman. It was quite amazing. They had never facilitated a group that had as many men as that one did, but it worked fine. I mean, Oak Park Temple, they had run it about 4 years before this brought it to us, and they did have all women at the time. Why do you think that might be, that more women tend to participate?
As women do in general. Women are joiners, particularly in groups. Men don't usually join in groups as much,
I think
in my experience.
And I think a lot of it may have been that it was held during the day, and these just happened to be women that were not working and could, so they were available to attend during the day.
At Oak Park Temple, though, some of the sessions were in the evenings.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Are you thinking about starting another one coming up?
I mentioned it, I think, before you came on. We'd like to do another one. Right now, they're in the process of revamping it to fit with a 90-minute session that's on Zoom rather than 2 hours in person. Another reason, though, why possibly more women than men?
It would be interesting to ask the men if they're willing to share rather than us speculating.
Okay. What do you
don't
think?
like to admit we're getting old. Maybe we're not thinking we can be wise.
My wife actually accuses me of accepting aging a little too readily.
I think women seem to be more affected by the ageism than the men.
I think that I agree. I think that's just what I was saying, really. My wife keeps saying, why do you like kind of revel in this? And she's still fighting it.
Fighting it. That's interesting. Living in the present and really focusing on what we can do and let me ask you a question about time. So as we're getting older, how do you see yourselves spending your time, or looking at time, and some of your other attitudes compared to when you were younger, say in your 30s and 40s?
The last 8 months has changed that significantly. I think for all of us, just not being able to go out and do things, and we're so severely limited, at least those who have remained in self-quarantine, if I can say that. So it's that answering that is more difficult now than it would have been much earlier in the year.
True, but okay, yes, I agree with you to some extent, definitely. However, so looking at the word doing, being a doing person. So if you're quote doing less, or you have the opportunity to do less, or maybe not less, but differently, then what does that make you? What kind of a person? A being person. And that's a lot of the beauty of aging, actually, is, when we're younger, we are, all about the job and, the growing family, and we're defined by what we do. And when we retire, if we've really enjoyed our career, what is one major thing that is kind of is an issue when we're getting ready to retire?
Giving things up.
Yeah, giving up part of who we were, and that's not easy.
Well, it's not just part of who we were. It's okay. Yes, it is part of who we were in terms of how we responded to different challenges. When you're in the work environment, depending on the kinds of jobs that you did, or what you did pre-retirement, you were challenged more, both physically, emotionally, intellectually, and now you move into a different phase of life. The real challenge is keeping that up, even if it's different. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. How many of you are finding new things to do? Or I don't like to really, not in the sense of being a doing person, but just expanding and doing things maybe you would have liked to do before, but you were just too busy. And now maybe you're learning a new skill, or you're reading more books, or you're, taking up a new hobby.
I'm still figuring that out.
Yeah,
That's
and
okay.
I think I always look at as aging as a time to reinvent yourself. I mean, all of us, we've had our careers, now we're retired, now we're learning this or we're learning that. So I just call it reinventing myself, to like, I never knew how to do this before, but now I can, and I can share that new passion and pass it forward. And this time of being so quarantined has just really been a little tricky, I have to admit. But again, it gives yourself that luxury of saying, well, what do I want to do when I can be with some other people? What changes can I imagine myself being different in the future? I like getting older. I don't know about anybody else, but I'm really enjoying this time.
Yeah. Okay.
Barbara, you mentioned books. I mean, I always say I've got to retire so I can read more books, and that they're stacking up. So it's something to look forward to. But I'm always of the perspective that every year that clips by, I have fewer years to do this, that, and the other. So it's helpful to hear that even if you do slow down in what you do, you don't have to stop doing. You don't have to stop growing as a person. So. And this last several months has been unfair, especially to the older generation. Those of us who are a certain age and above are, most vulnerable. So our situation's been impacted probably the most, but we have to look forward to the day soon that we can get back to normal, and then, you know, have the perspective of that we made it through, and now we have fewer years, I guess, or fewer,
Well,
whatever it is, we have left.
but we don't know. And that's the beauty of it, is we don't know. And, you know, what is, count your, not your years, but your
Blessings.
count your moments, count your, you know, yeah. Yeah.
It's not the years in your life, it's the life in your years. Right?
There you go. And on that happy note, because I think we can agree on that. I'm gonna bid you Lashana Tova and Gemar Katima Tova. It's been a pleasure talking with you, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.
Shana Tova.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, Marla.